Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Arsaholics podcast. Mice, why'd you cough at a time like that? I'm just doing my intro.
I thought it was on mute, mate. I'm sorry. I apologise.
No,
Do it again.
Jesus. Anyway, thank you. Sorry, everyone. Welcome to the Arsaholics podcast on Sunday night. You've got me, Raj, here. You've got Mize, who introduced himself already, and you've got Aaron in there.
Why is that so funny?
Well, I don't know. Like, I just thought, mate, do you want to cough? Do you want to sneeze as well? Do you want to?
Right.
Was that what we're doing? Good.
Oh, good.
We are recording after a massively important game that we weren't involved in. Man City and Tottenham. Man City were at Tottenham today in a game that was hugely relevant for us. And I want to talk about this a little bit about, whether it's okay or not to want Tottenham to win.
I saw this, mate, on Twitter.
Yeah.
I was meant to message you, but I've just been so busy this evening. I saw you got into a little bit of a heated...
I didn't realise this would be so controversial.
Did you see this, Aaron, then?
I saw that. So Raj was obviously like, I think everyone should want Man City to win. If not,
What?
you are... Is that not what you said?
Spurs to win.
No.
Oh, sorry, Spurs to win. Sorry.
Yeah.
Got complete wrong end of it. Yeah, you said I want everyone to... I think everyone should want Spurs to win. If not, basically, you're not an Arsenal fan and you should leave the club.
I mean, that's not
along
what I
those
said.
lines, right?
Like, I didn't. That's not what I said. But I mean, look, the essence of what I said was like that. I didn't really understand how, in the context of the season that we're in, people wouldn't want Spurs to win this game, right? And my whole point about that was like, look, Spurs ain't catching us this season. Okay, they're not a rival to us in terms of what we're trying to achieve this season. Man City are. It could be the first time we win the league in, 2 decades. It's huge, and yeah, Spurs playing Man City. Just in the context of that, I was confused as to why anyone wouldn't want Spurs to take points off Man City and the maximum amount of points. I didn't think it would be that controversial. I don't think it overall was that controversial. But, a couple of people sort of said, yeah, no way. Would never want Spurs to win. And then I kind of got into with one particular person who I won't call out. She's a very nice person, actually, like generally. But like, I don't know. I got really taken aback myself. I don't know. So look, I get your guys' opinion on this, right? Just at the most basic level, right? What I mean, look, I don't like Spurs. I'm an Arsenal season ticket holder. Why would I like Spurs? I don't want good things to happen to Spurs. But in the context of what's going on at the moment, I'm very clear. I can sleep well at night wanting them to have won today, which they did. I mean, what do you guys think?
Nah, reluctantly, I agree. I'm sure Miles probably agrees as well. In that, like, we are going to need every little bit of help to win this title. And there aren't many teams in the league that can beat City, right? And if anyone offers us a chance of beating City, and that helps us win a league title, mate, I don't care who it is. The reality is, if we win the league, every single team in the country finishes below us. So it does not matter what they do if this helps us win the league. Now, obviously, if in some horribly tragic scenario, if we fall away and we're in a top 4 battle with Spurs, it becomes very different. But for now, we are, it could possibly be a once in a generation opportunity to challenge for a league title. We have to take everything we can get. And right now, Man City are our biggest rivals for winning a league. You have to want them to drop points wherever they go. Even if that means it's Spurs. And I think, I tweeted this. I think the good thing is there were a lot of Spurs fans out there who probably would have been pretty happy if they had lost today. And actually, they're probably going home now really annoyed that they've won. and that makes me happy. The fact that we can just put a little bit of misery on Spurs and Harry Kane's big day makes it all a little bit more tolerable.
Particularly if like the league is won by, say if we win the league by a couple of points or something like this, right? That where it's a 1-game swing type thing. But Miles, do you also think that Do you also think that it's a case where Spurs fans, in a way, would probably be really annoyed at the thought of Arsenal fans actually wanting them to win the game? It kind of says something around superiority when that dynamic hits, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. I mean, look, I pretty much agreed with what both of what you guys were saying. It's a bit of a weird stance to take when, no matter what the situation, no matter what the scenario, you just want Spurs to lose. Like that's not the case. Yeah, like you say, if it comes to the end of the season and we win the league by a point or 2 points or 3 points, you could trace it back to Spurs basically doing us a favor. Obviously, it's not as straightforward as that. But yeah, I mean, I don't know, Spurs fans, like Aaron, and you've said the point about they'll be going home unhappy today, or kind of partially unhappy, which I get. But I guess
put it this way, right? If it's the other way around and Spurs are challenging for a title, and we are playing Man City, I would be kind of annoyed that we've lost.
If it was sort of like 5 or 6 games to go, then I think there's so much football to be played that I don't think if you're a Spurs fan, you're probably just enjoying the win. You're probably just enjoying the fact that Harry Kane's now all-time top scorer, whatever, 200 Premier League goals. And especially they got beat by Man City a couple of weeks ago. I think you're just probably reveling in that for now. If it was, March, April, it's a little bit different, because then it probably has more of an impact on, the end of the season, like the running.
Of course. It's just, even if it makes them feel 1% less happy, I'll take it.
But this whole point you made, right, about it not being that far, it's as in there being lots of time left this season, and therefore lots of other things could be the difference. Yeah, so that could be something where a lot of these Arsenal fans who are saying no, never want Spurs to win. Today is no exception. Blah blah blah. It's something that they could stand behind, because they could say, look, there's loads of football to be played. So in this Twitter exchange that you are, that you referenced before, right? I made that point. So I said, okay, because it seemed very there's a couple of people who are very emotive about it. They really felt like there is no circumstance in which you should ever want Spurs to win. So I said, look, imagine a hypothetical scenario. Arsenal and City are going for the league title. It's the last game of the season. And if Tottenham beat City, Arsenal win the league. And if Tottenham do not beat City, like if it's draw or a City win the league. So it's completely binary. Binary situation, last game of the season. And I still got knocked back. I still got to there's no situation. And for me, that and so in fairness, so what this person then turned back to say to me, which I think is a question to open up to you guys, is she basically sort of implied that I don't really understand local rivalry, right?
And you live all the way in Surrey, mate.
Yeah, well, exactly. So basically, it was quite funny, because I think she just assumed that I didn't live in the area. Like, make that of what you will,
or in the country, maybe.
Yeah, perhaps, or the country. Exactly. Right. So she never actually responded to when I said, to be clear, are you saying that you would rather Arsenal not win the title in that scenario? She kept on just asking the local question. I sort of said, well, I'm not local, but I'm pretty sure not every local would agree with that. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe, I don't know. Is this something
that is nonsense. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Anyway, yeah.
If it was a choice of Spurs winning or Arsenal winning the league, I'm picking Arsenal winning the league any day. I don't know. Maybe if we've won 15 League Cups in a row and this is the 16th chance to win a League Cup, I might be like, you know what? I don't care about that 16. Or if we won 16 league titles in a row, maybe the 17th one, I'll be like, actually, it'd be quite funny if Spurs drop some points today. Screw the league title. But even then, that is an extreme position to take.
Yeah. So what my thing there was, I said, well, in that scenario, then the only explanation is that you hate Tottenham more than you love Arsenal, and that's okay if that's what your position is. But if you love Arsenal more than you hate Tottenham, there is no doubt you want Arsenal to win the league. That is, just over and above.
I think there was another tweet that, if you're talking, I think it was in that same thread or that conversation you're having, where the person said something along the lines of, we should be able to win the league title without favours of anyone else. Yeah. So if we're good enough to win it, we're good enough to win it regardless. Which Sort of true.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, I mean, if you're good enough and you can blow everyone else out of the water, then great. But obviously, yeah, like Aaron has said, you want City to be just dropping points as much as possible to help us along the way.
I remember, I think it was 99 where on the last day, I think Spurs were playing Man United.
I think you're right.
We were playing, I'm tempted to say Villa, but I don't know if that's right. And
we needed a
a Spurs win.
Yeah,
they obviously didn't do it.
I think.
Yeah. No, I mean, same thing. That is the scenario you asked, right? Like,
yeah,
we needed a Spurs win to get the league title, and yeah, of course, everyone. I'm pretty sure. I was watching that game, and people at Highbury were singing "Come on, you Spurs."
No,
I'm pretty sure. Yeah,
no
because
way.
we went like 1-0 up or something like that. We went 1-0 up, and it was the last day. I'll have to like check YouTube or something, and I'm pretty sure people at Highbury were singing "Come on, you Spurs" because they needed a win from Tottenham. Like, obviously in jest. Like, I'm not saying they're all like Tottenham supporters, but it's happened, mate. It's happened before, and if it happens again,
yeah.
I mean, I don't think I'll ever sing "Come on, you Spurs," but
Raj was in the group chat today, wasn't he?
I was.
Yeah. I mean,
absolutely.
Like, we need every bit of help we can get in this scrap that we're going to be in. And if it comes in the form of a Harry Kane 1-0 winner, you have to take it.
And is this so we obviously we're going to record this episode and when we were planning this episode, etc., like, this game hadn't happened yet, so we had discussed our own feelings around the Arsenal game immediately after the game finished, etc. Now, this result that's just happened now, I imagine, actually may affect some of the tone, feeling, or just general kind of opinion on the result, because I think everyone pretty much expected City would probably win today. It was quite interesting, watching on Sky and watching their kind of their reflections on the game. A lot of the pundits seemed to suggest that today was the day that they sort of thought that the tide would change, right? Arsenal dropped points, and now City's famous second half of the season points kind of accumulation thing that they have, the kind of the amazing ability they have to do that. I think everyone assumed that would start day, but it didn't. So after today's game, do you guys feel any differently about the threat of Man City versus, because I guess the feeling has always been that they are the behemoth. They're the one that as soon as we slip up, it's going to get away from us. But do your feelings about the dynamics between the two teams, has it changed since what you saw today? I mean, Mize, do you have any thoughts on it?
I think it has a little bit, to be honest. I mean, look, yeah, obviously, I think we all probably expected that the gap by now, Sunday evening, would be 2 points. And it does put a completely different spin on the weekend, because it's almost like, well, from an Arsenal perspective, nothing's changed. It's another game ticked off. Yes, we've lost, but so have they. So from a kind of, obviously points difference and how many games are left to go, it doesn't really change anything. But if you're looking at City, I can't really work it out. And I don't think many people can really work it out, unless you're probably Pep Guardiola, where they've been very just indifferent this season. And it's really hard to say, like, even when you think of some of his team selections, like today he went with, what's the young fullback's name? Rico Lewis at left back. Didn't play De Bruyne. I'm not sure. Like, I didn't really watch the game properly, and I didn't really catch up like pre-match or post-match. So I'm not really sure kind of what happened. But De Bruyne didn't start again, which is a bit odd. Obviously, Haaland's probably still going to get 30 or 40 goals this season, but there's certain games where he's just not getting a look in, or he's just not getting the service. So there's players like Phil Foden. I don't know if he was injured, but he's not starting at the moment. It's all a bit strange from a City perspective. And
just before you carry on, just to clarify those 2 points, because I saw the pre-match. So De Bruyne De Bruyne, Pep confirmed was a tactical decision, so he was completely fit. It was purely tactical. But
Yeah.
Foden showed discomfort or some kind of illness the night before. So yeah, sorry, carry on.
Interesting. No, yeah. So I mean, regardless, like, yeah, just some interesting decisions from Pep, and obviously he's trying to, I guess, find a formula that works, and probably hasn't really been able to do that yet. And yeah, like you would think that they, like you say, like the narrative before they played today was they win, they're 2 points behind us, they're then, you know, a win away from, you know, a 2 point swing, a 3 point swing, a win away from then overtaking us. It changes the kind of mindset, you know, if you're trying to chase a team down and us trying to hold City off. So very, very surprised. And they didn't really play, like I said, I didn't watch the game properly, but they didn't really play very well today at all. Spurs were, I think they deserve the win completely. And it's just weird. It's a weird one. Like, is it Haaland? Is it the fact that they're now just having to play a very different way with a different type of striker than what, you know, one they've ever had before? And if he doesn't get the service, then is he offering enough else for the team? Arguable. I don't know, but yeah, like, I mean, I think it's given me a bit more confidence, to be honest, because I think now we're seeing this where City have dropped points through the season. They're doing that quite frequently now. And yes, there's still 18 or so games to go, so they could easily go on a massive run, a really good run, and probably pick up a shitload of wins. And you know, it's all about Arsenal matching that or bettering that. But I'm not sure I'd back them to do that this season compared to previous seasons. Like, even the season they had to chase Liverpool down, they won like 14 games in a row. And I'm not saying they would necessarily even have to do that to catch us, but that's their levels. Like, that's that's what they've done in the past. I'm not sure, looking at this City team, there's just something not quite right with them. Maybe they're just not clicked yet. I don't know. It's a bit of a weird one. But yeah, I don't know what you guys think about it.
I mean, go on, Aaron. And I was just going to prompt on that, because, you know, it clearly there is something that's not quite right. And Pep's post-match interviews are pretty damning towards his own team, right? He's really laying the gauntlet down and talking about passion, etc. But yeah, what are your thoughts? Because he is chopping, changing, he is being ruthless, he is being kind of callous in some ways. You know, he is doing lots of different things and surprising everyone. And before, those surprises usually led to wins and, oh, what genius. And now it's looking the other way. That being said, they're still second. Well, I mean, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think two things, right? So number one, I think you have to say the Haaland effect is certainly probably one of the biggest factors tactically why they're less dominant in games. Because what you get with Haaland, you know, is you get an elite goal scorer, like, and when we say elite, we're talking like the best in the world, but you don't get much else. And it's a bit like, and therefore they're trying to do all those Pep things that they used to do with 11 people with 10, and it just becomes a little bit easier to play against. And you know, the downside of that is you then have to deal with an elite striker when you're a defender, right? And this guy has shown that if you don't deal with him, he will punish you ruthlessly again and again and again. But I think it just makes Man City a bit more of an easier opponent to defend against, because you know that if you can contain Haaland, because he's not doing anything else, he's not able to bring other players into the game as much as, well, Gabriel Jesus could do, as much as some of the other players they had. And that, I think psychologically, like, I think now it's, you stop Haaland, you stop Man City. Before, it was, if you stop Jesus, you're not stopping Man City, because you've got De Bruyne, you've got Mahrez, you've got Sterling, and you've got Silva, Gundogan, and all those players, and they've had to sacrifice that a bit. Now, thing is, Haaland is very hard to stop, and he could literally score 4 goals every game from now until the end of the season and win them the title. And I think that's a calculation that Pep has done. But then secondly, I think, City, yes, they've dropped their levels, but let's be real, if it wasn't for an outstanding Arsenal team, they'd still be running away with it. The fact is, we've kind of rocked up with a 50-point half season which is basically a 100-point season over the course of 38 games, and they're 5 points behind us. So very bad rough maths, but they're still on course for a 90+ point season, which in most seasons will give you the league quite easily. So I think the fact is they've come up against a very, very good opponent in us, and they're having to be very, very good, because for the first half of the season we have basically been perfect.
Yeah, it's all good points, and Shani in the comments talking about an article in the Guardian about Pep streamlining, effectively, trying to get the best out of Haaland. I get that. I get that. Clearly, they've invested in the world's most elite talent with regards to the centre forward position. He has a very specific profile, and they have to do something to be able to accommodate him. The things that I don't understand are twofold. Firstly, at the beginning of the season, that didn't look like it was a problem. So it looked like they were getting the best out of him and they were doing just fine. I think there was one game early season where they drew away somewhere, but otherwise, the guys banging goals, they looked dangerous. And I think partly the reason why he was dangerous was because teams were unable. They knew that they couldn't just try and stop him. There was so much talent elsewhere. So on one hand, it feels like teams have figured something out, and Tottenham and Man United both did really well, I think, at just eliminating Haaland. But the second thing that doesn't quite stack up for me is it's not just really around him that these changes seem to be fairly radical. I mean, Pep's approach to his back four, his evolution of the kind of inverted fullback position. I think we talked about it on one of our episodes before, using Rico Lewis and doing that in a different way. I don't think that's Haaland driven. I don't think that's driven from purely trying to get best out of Haaland. That's just him trying to take this evolution of the team. He's trying to change stuff. He's trying to get them to do different things, but also from a personnel perspective, I think he's really, really laying down the gauntlet to sort of say, well, look, if you're not going to do the new things that I want you to do, then I'm going to drop you. And maybe that's why Diaz and Laporte, despite being fit, aren't getting picked, or why De Bruyne is being left on the bench at, on a massive game like this.
Or why Cancelo left as well.
Or why Cancelo left, right? And it feels a bit like something's not quite right behind closed doors. Like there's a little bit of tension. There's a little bit that I think Pep thinks that he needs to exert his influence. Or is the point, is it just as ruthless as Pep going, do you know what? I want to basically do what the hell I want to do in the league. And I think I'm probably good enough to put up a title challenge. But if I don't, it's okay, because my focus is Champions League. And I'm going to completely focus on winning the Champions League. And I'm getting my team ready for the way that I think I need to play in the Champions League.
It's hard to do that, though, isn't
what
it?
is that, though? It's getting ready for the Champions League, losing to Spurs.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, I know.
Like what?
But is it hypothetically? Is it is he? I guess time will tell. But is he trying to play his big players less by just kind of managing their fitness in a really ruthless way? Obviously, that wouldn't stack up with the fact that he plays Haaland every game. But with the other guys, Diaz, Laporte, fullbacks with De Bruyne, sometimes with Foden, even though he was unfit today, generally he does have the tendency to drop him every now and again. Mahrez is often benched. Whatever.
He's always done that, though, mate, hasn't he?
Yeah,
like to a certain extent, if you think about it, you think back, Pep's always been a tinkerer. He's always changed. You never really know. Like we all play fantasy football, fantasy Premier League, and you pick, a Mahrez or you pick a Foden, but you just don't know if he's going to start that week, or he might be like, no, I'm going to start him in the Champions League next week. And he literally could swap a number of players, and yet he's still been pretty successful over the years, regardless. So I agree with you that he is changing a lot, but I think one thing that you generally don't do, or I'm quite surprised that he's doing, is you don't rest your best player. Or sorry, not rest. You don't not play your best player. And De Bruyne not starting this week, and I don't think he started another game a couple of weeks ago or last week. I can't remember.
I don't think he's played against Spurs in the home game either.
In the home game, yeah. And that's interesting. Like he is their best player, and he is like what you'd say Ødegaard is to us, but probably he's better than Ødegaard. And Yeah, he's just a world-class player. How do you not play him? So it is interesting. Maybe the priority has shifted a little bit, but how do you can't turn it on and off like that, right? Like you can't turn form on and off. So it's like the Champions League is around the corner. They need to be, I mean, arguably you don't, but ideally you want to be doing well in your domestic competition, and you just kind of, seamlessly transition into your European games, and you come off the back of a win in the league. That's how it should work. So, I mean, I agree with everything you guys have said. It's really weird. Like, it's one of those things that you can't put your finger on it. I guess the worry is if he gets it right, then we know how good City can be, and we know they've got talented players, obviously, and they are capable. Pep is capable of getting this team to go on a very, very consistent run, and ultimately that's what's going to win the league, right? That's what wins the league every season, the most consistent team. So at the moment, that's not them. And we'd have to see, right, if all of these changes end up.
Let me ask you guys a question. Jumping the gun a bit here. How many points do you think we've got 2 games against them? How many points do you think we'll get? And how many points do you think will be enough from those 2 games?
It's hard to answer the second question, I think, now.
Yeah.
Because there's so many other games.
Right. So put it this way: like if we get 6 points versus them,
that
then means like.
Yeah. So I think we'll beat. I think we'll beat them at the Emirates. I'm not confident. Like I'm not going into games saying we're definitely going to win, but like what you said in the group chat earlier, Raj, if they play the way that they played today and in a few other games recently, how good we've been at home this season, we should beat them, and I can see that happening. I think that game though, and I know we're going to come on to this, but the Brentford game before that is just massive, because if we don't beat Brentford and then City win, I think they've got Villa at home.
Yeah.
Then the gap could potentially be 2 points. Let's say we lose to Brentford, and they win, that's 2 points. And then they come to the game at the Emirates knowing that if they win, they go top. So I think that Brentford game, we absolutely just have to win, obviously, and keep it as at least a 5-point gap. And then there's not too much pressure on us. It's obviously a pressure game. It's a huge game, but we don't necessarily have to win that game. We can go in without pressure, and City have to come and try and beat us. So I'm confident we can get at least 3 points. It's very hard to say what the situation is going to be like. When do we play them? Is it April at their ground?
Yeah. The thing is if we can beat them, if we can beat them at Arsenal, which I think we're more than capable of doing, particularly how they're playing, if we can do that, and if we aren't slipping up in the other games outside of that, the pressure is huge on City when we go there. It's massive, right? And so and it becomes one of those things that we can almost go into that game hopefully in a situation where there's not a huge amount to lose. Like hopefully the buffer should be there such that it won't be a case where the swing in that game would result in City overtaking us. And I feel like around that time, correct if I'm wrong, but I think that the Champions League games will be thick and fast around that time as well, right?
Yeah. You think so?
It's interesting. So listen, to answer your question, Aaron, I think that we'll get. I'll just say, from being a slightly optimistic fan as well, like I'll say we'll get 4 points.
So you think we'll win at the Emirates?
Yeah, I think we'll win at the Emirates and draw there. Now
it's very hard to say, though, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
I think so. Exactly. I think actually, if we come away from those games with 2 points, like without losing any of them, that is pretty big in the context of like where we are now, because it's 2 games less where they can catch us, and it, yes, we've dropped 2 points, but it means that our rivals have dropped 2 points.
Yeah.
And like, obviously wins are great, but especially that away game, I think it's just a must not lose. Even the home game, if we come away from there with a point, I feel a bit like we did it when we played Newcastle, where it's like that we just didn't need to lose that, and that's okay.
Yeah, because the really basic mathematical logic, the really basic logic, right, is that at the end of the day, if the gap stays the same, every week that goes by is better for the team who are on top of that gap, right?
Yeah.
That sounds a silly thing to say, but the point is, in a weekend like this, for example, well, even though everything stayed the same, actually it's still better for Arsenal.
Yeah.
Because you've just moved that one fixture ahead.
Exactly.
So I think they will know that. Arteta will know that. The team will know that. It's gonna. I also think that there's also this perception that once City overtake Arsenal, that's it.
Yeah, there is.
Yeah, that's
right.
true. I think
Everyone's
that
just
comes
waiting
from
for that
that
to
comes from
happen.
us,
Yeah.
I think, as well.
Yeah, that does.
Like
that
it's
does,
this fear in the back of our head, right? That we have like there's the scars from the end of last season. They still haven't healed, and we're just like, are we a good team? Are we title challengers? And like the rival fans are obviously giving us stick, saying, "Oh, Arsenal fall away." You know, Gary Neville's been like saying this since day one that we'll fall away. I hope, and we're just waiting to see, like, are we going to fall away? And then will that pressure of like City overtaking us by 2 points, is that the inevitable? I don't know. Like you said, Roger, I don't think it is, because this City, unless they go on one of their mad runs where they do that 13-game winning streak, which I don't think they're going to do, like you guys said, there's going to be a chance. We just need to stay in it.
We do. I'm gonna, we've done a great job at avoiding talking about Everton Arsenal. Before we do, Shadi's been putting some comments in. He's got a question. He's got a question in here, which I'll direct to you guys. So, I think this is in the context of City, the first bit. So he's saying, aside from tactics, is it a change in transfer stroke profile of player, effectively, that City's squad refresh has been about? Arteta's shift in players and profile is celebrated, but City seem to have shipped out their winners in favour of team players. Miles, what do you think?
Well, I mean, when you think about the players that they've sort of shipped out or sold, obviously two to us. I'm trying to think who else. Obviously Cancelo's gone now, but I don't know. I mean, possibly. I wouldn't necessarily say they've shipped out their winners. Like the Zinchenko one, for example, that's turned out fantastic for us. But I feel like they probably thought at the start of the season, considering he's been a relatively bit part player for them, like he's never held down a regular position, I don't think. And he's been a bit of a rotation player. They probably thought that he's a player that, for all the reasons, he wants first team football and all the rest of it, and good money's coming for him. Makes sense. And Jesus kind of similar. They've just signed Haaland. Jesus is starts in most Premier League teams. Makes sense for him to go. So I'm not necessarily sure. Like it's easy to sort of question the players that they've sold now that they are maybe not doing as well as they have been in the past. But yeah, so I wouldn't necessarily agree that they've shipped out their winners, because you think about the players that they've kept. I think they've got plenty of winners in that team, and I think I'm not making excuses for City at all, but you think about a couple of the injuries that they've had. I'm thinking mainly Dyche, who was like a bit of a rock for them in defense. John Stones got injured recently, didn't he? And he's been like a lot. I was listening to quite a few podcasts, or a particular podcast, and they were doing their team of the year so far, and 2 out of the 3 guys were like, John Stones has been the best centre back in the league up until now, which is really interesting, because I didn't even realise he'd been that good, to be honest. But obviously they were pretty set on him. So obviously it sounds like Stones has been pretty good. So they're, it's probably the equivalent of us losing Saliba and Gabriel. I know that our next options are nowhere near as good as what City have got in the squad, but that's still quite disruptive to them. So maybe that's had an impact as well.
The other thing is, like, you look at, I just pulled up, like, there's this illusion that the City have a big squad. They've obviously spent a lot of money. That's true. But there's this illusion because City can obviously bring on 1 or 2 like elite people off the bench, right? Like today they brought on De Bruyne, they brought on Gundogan. But you look at their bench today, apart from those 2, they had Ortega, the goalkeeper, but then they had Diaz, obviously very good, Laporte, very good, Gomez, another defender. But then after that, they had Calvin Phillips, they have Maximo Perrone and Cole Palmer.
They just signed Perrone.
Yeah.
Cole Palmer's meant to be like.
I know what you mean. I guess I know what your point.
It's not like after you get past that, those first, one or two attacking players, I felt like last season City had 6 or 7 £50 million players on their bench, and maybe their depth isn't as good as it used to be, and especially attacking wise, and that potentially hurts them a bit too.
I think that's what Shani's saying. I mean, I guess Foden's injured as well, right?
Yeah,
I mean, Calvin Phillips is, he's a solid squad player. He's not going to be playing many games, but you'd want him in your squad. Like, he was great for England. He does a job and all the rest of it. Like, yeah, I kind of see where Shani's coming from, and I can't necessarily say I disagree. And he made a good point. He put a list of players that have left since 2020, and when you read the list and you see the names, you're like, yeah, fair enough. Like, there are some serious players on there and serious winners and guys that were integral to City's success over the last few years. So maybe it's just a case of he's almost rebuilding. Pep's in the middle of rebuilding this new team, like a new kind of generation of City, as it were, and he just hasn't quite got. Either hasn't quite got it right yet, or maybe he just hasn't quite got the players that he wants in yet. I don't know. If you think that you're now going with this Rico Lewis kind of option, and he's playing the inverted fullback, and today he played left back, he's been playing right back before that. That's quite a drastic change, and it might just take a bit of time for that kind of move. And he's a very, very young player. It might just take a little bit of time for those things to work out. So it could just be a multitude of reasons, really. It's hard to pin it down to one or two.
So if we win the league, maybe we will just have benefited from them being in this year of transition, which they accept that they needed to be. Maybe we'll see. There's a lot of time to go. Look, it certainly wasn't part of the plan to spend 36 minutes talking about City.
So we end it there, then.
But yeah, yeah. Let's end the pod. That's on the end the pod there. No, but it was really good chat. Obviously everything to do with City right now relates so specifically to Arsenal. Do you know what I mean? In a weird way. So you kind of have to talk about it. But let's talk about our game, because we were all feeling it in the same way that all Arsenal fans everywhere were feeling it. Like, we're a very privileged position this season for losses to not be very frequent, particularly in the Premier League. They are incredibly infrequent. And Everton had Frank Lampard not so long ago. They were absolutely atrocious under Frank towards the end. Their recruitment has been awful. I mean, they even had players taking a medical, doing the media, and legging it to other clubs. Literally, they sold Anthony Gordon. It's a bit of a car crash. You've got fans protesting left, right, and centre. They want all the board out. The board weren't even at the game today. All their seats were empty. Yesterday rather. So all kinds of turmoil. But appoint Sean Dyche, who is, like for fairly or unfairly, has this reputation, right, of being a bit of an old school throwback manager, direct football. You put him in the category of Allardyce, that kind of genre. And I say fairly or unfairly because many people would actually point to what he did at Burnley over all those years and kind of say actually like he probably deserves a little bit more respect than that. But anyway, look, he's come in. He's been there for a couple of weeks. But I think this was his first Premier League game, or first game at all, and we played, the stereotypical new manager bounce, whatever you want to call it. The fans were rocking. The players were so motivated, up for it, surprisingly well drilled for the short space of time that he's been there. And we weren't quite at our best, were we, Aaron?
Yeah, no, we were rubbish, mate. Let's put it like quite at our best is putting it nicely. We were awful. And you can give credit to Everton as much as you like. Yes, new manager bounce, very unfortunate. But we were just bad. I think every single player was bad, pretty much. Maybe one or two decent-ish performances, but you could clearly see that there were a few players who were just a level or two below their usual high standards.
Now, does that automatically qualify us as being bad at playing devil's advocate? Because, it was interesting when I was watching Sky, Mika Richards made a point of basically saying, Arsenal didn't do all that much wrong yesterday. They had some chances, they weren't their best, but they didn't do that much wrong. Is it that we expect so much of Arsenal that when we are even a couple of years below, it seems awful? Or do you think it genuinely was awful?
Yeah, I think we were bad in when you compare to our very, very high standards this season, right? And I think that was a performance. And I think then the question is, when you are bad, can you still come away with a decent result? Either can you nick a win, or can you at least come away and not get beat? And it was just one of those games where they started, we started all right actually, and then eventually they were tough on us. They were tackles flying in, the pitch was awful, and then they got a goal, and then that was it, right? Then they just made it very, very difficult for us. And I thought actually our worst period of the game was probably the last 15 minutes, where I thought, look, you've conceded the goal, you've had some time to recover, you haven't conceded a second goal, but now go and get an equalizer. And I think those last 15 minutes after the subs, I thought were, I don't know, it was bad, right? I think I've used the word bad about 15 times now. But I think the thing is, right, how do we just need to make sure that it doesn't repeat itself. And we've been really good this season at just isolating those defeats as to what the one of the defeat, and just moving forward. And if we can do that again, I'm still very, very confident that we'll turn up against Brentford on Saturday and we'll put this to bed. And today's result probably helps us a bit, because it means that, look, in terms of the league table, we're no worse off now. Just put it behind us and move on. And as long as we do that, then nobody will care. When it gets to the Premier League years and they're talking about our title win, we'll just fast forward this game and we'll just move on.
I think I was just going to say, I think you're being a little bit harsh on Everton. I thought Everton were we weren't at the races. We weren't at the the high standards that we've set ourselves this season. For whatever reason that was, it was a bit of a weird. Again, that's another weird one to kind of understand what actually happened with us. But I feel like Everton were really good.
They were good, but even if Everton are good, you still expect us to win, right?
Well, this is the thing, because they are now a completely different side, not just because they've changed. Well, yeah, pretty much just because they've changed their manager. Under Lampard, there was, no fight, no quality really. There was so much wrong with them under Lampard, and they were just going nowhere. Obviously, that's why they sacked him. And they clearly, Dyche, as Raj said, Dyche comes into any club, whatever club he comes into, doesn't matter who the players are, he's going to play a certain way. He's going to set them up a certain way. And when the lineup came out, I watched the game with a mate at the pub. When the lineup came out, he said to me, looked at the 11. He said, well, we looked at it together, and he said, that's not that's a mid-table 11. That's a Premier League mid-table 11 in terms of who's starting. They're not amazing. They don't have any kind of star players as such, but that's a fairly solid 11. It's not like a Bournemouth, for example, or a Southampton. And so I think that's what we saw yesterday. I think we saw what Everton should have been for the last 6 months, or even for last season as well. And yeah, obviously Dyche is going to come in, but he's going to come in and, like I say, it's going to be his plan, and it's going to be direct. It's going to be tough tackling, all the rest of it, kind of getting your foot in, and he's going to get them up for it and all of that. But even if you just watched how well they pressed as a team and the work rate that they put in off the ball, they were really good in that sense. They didn't give players like Ødegaard much time at all. Well, not much time. They didn't give Ødegaard any time really to kind of do what he would normally do. And I think, for example, that's one of the reasons why Arsenal weren't as good as we have been. Yesterday we weren't as good as we have been in other games. And yeah, they were just very, very solid, to be honest. And going forward, I think I messaged in the group chat saying, how are we feeling about this? Because I didn't feel particularly confident. I didn't think, none of us did. And I thought, what we expected is kind of what happened in terms of what we expected from Everton, where they just obviously went very, very direct. They got the ball out wide as much as possible. They tried to get crosses in. As a result, they won a shitload of corners. And every corner, obviously they scored from a corner, but every corner, I felt like we were struggling to defend every corner. We were we were probably, winning headers or whatever, but it wasn't like where I've seen Arsenal in the past, as in this season in the past, where I feel like generally we've been pretty comfortable from like set pieces and corners, but I feel like it wasn't even they were putting in particularly good delivery. I'm not sure what it was, but I feel like we really struggled, and they just had this. I remember there was a period in the first half, I think, where they just had this like flurry of like 3 or 4 corners in a row, and we really seemed to struggle. Like it wasn't comfortable at all, and I think that's kind of what transpired in the second half, where they obviously got another corner and they managed to score from it.
Do you reckon it was complacency then from us?
No, I don't think so. I think sometimes these games just happen, right? Like you say, right, Aaron, and hopefully we look back at this game at the end of the season and it just doesn't matter. It doesn't come up in conversation at all. It's just like, oh, we lost to Everton, but then we went and beat Brentford. We went and got a result against City, and the season, our progress carried on. That's the thing, right? So I don't think it's complacency. I don't think there's any reason. Like, I just don't see that with this team. I don't see that with Arteta. I personally just can't see him accepting that. I think Everton were good. I think the narrative was set up for Everton to do what they did yesterday. It was manager's first game, home game, early kickoff. Fans were obviously going to be, rocking Goodison. And I think there was just a lot of things that combined with us maybe not being at like 100% performance level, maybe we were sort of like Michael Richards said, maybe we didn't do anything that wrong, but at the same time, we weren't as good as we have been. I think a combination of all those things just meant, we only lost 1-0 at the end of the day to a set piece. Like it wasn't like we got, but at the same time, I feel like Everton had the better chances. Everton were probably better going forward. Like they missed a good couple of these, like a couple of good chances as well. So yeah, I think it's just one of those days. I think it's one of, like you said, Aaron, one of those days, but it's all about the response now. It's all about the response, because that is ultimately what is going to make or break us as potentially champions this season. You can't go and not beat Brentford. If you don't beat Brentford, then it's a big. That's 2 games on the bounce where we're dropping points.
As that Mufasa in the comments with the Wenger quote of "If you eat caviar every day, it's difficult to return to sausages." That probably does sum up the bulk of kind of the emotional reaction that most of us kind of like outpoured as fans. One interesting thing, if you wanted to give Arteta and the boys the benefit of the doubt, in some ways, Arteta, a lot of the players have spoken about how detailed Arteta is and how he prepares the team from what they're going to face. I can't remember which of the players said it, but they sort of articulated that he was, he'd almost be able to tell them what was going to happen before it would happen, and then when they get on the pitch, the exact things would happen, and it was so helpful for them as players. I suppose when you've got a new manager coming in, that is quite stylistically different from Frank Lampard. It might have been difficult for Arteta to predict how they were going to play given the players that they had, etc. This being said, right, this was doing the rounds on the internet, and I thought it was quite impressive. There's a YouTube channel, I believe it's a YouTube channel called, I think it's Coach's Voice, and it's one of these where they get these professional. Yeah, it's quite cool. So various coaches go on and they do kind of masterclasses in coaching. So they've got a little board, and they've got their little kind of pieces with players, and they use it to talk through tactics and how they would prepare, etc. And they cut a snippet of Sean Dyche's masterclass a while ago, and he was basically talking about how in the teams that he coaches, they work really hard on doing this thing called protecting the V, and he kind of described it, and it was effectively just a way of defending, essentially, where you make sure that you kind of create this V that comes from the goal outwards. It's a very sort of specific thing, kind of touches the edge of the penalty area and then kind of comes straight. And he basically just talked about how you got these 4 defenders, they kind of sit in there. You've got your like midfielders above there. And then as soon as kind of a winger kind of gets the ball wide, then one of your defenders, and it's basically just all about how you manipulate your players to make sure that you are defending statistically the most dangerous part of the pitch, which is that V area. So he kind of was using all these things. And what they then did was they played a video of Everton against us, basically doing exactly what he was doing with those pieces. And so what was really impressive there, I suppose, from my point of view, is that's clearly something, he mentioned, he goes, me and my coaching staff work really, really hard on that. I suppose what's really impressive is they're doing that so quickly. So he's managed to get them doing that very, very quickly. but actually it was really working against us because effectively, you know, what their plan is in doing that, they go, you make them go wide, and when they go wide, we double up on them over and over again. You sort of do that, and you get loads of players in this dangerous area as well. And it felt like we struggled with that. Now, the bit that, now flipping it onto us, if you are a top team, you always know that you're going to face teams with a kind of low block or a mid block who are going to do stuff like this to try and stifle you. All the top teams know that. And so they come up with their kind of tactics to try and come out of this. But one of the tactics is purely individual brilliance, right? You stack a team with like top talent, and then you hope that individual brilliance, if nothing else is working, individual brilliance, you can't really have a tactic to defend against someone who is going to do a little, you know, crazy bit of skill or a shot from 30 yards that, you know, most players can't make. And I think that was what I was a bit disappointed with, that a lot of our players are top players. And there's been moments this season that they've been doing incredible things. And in a game like, you know, what we had the other day, I was really disappointed that no one was able to produce that, because Pickford basically had nothing to do all game. And that's really disappointing for me, because at the end of the day, like you guys said, right, it's still Everton, despite the new manager, despite kind of, you know, them being at Goodison Park. Player for player, yes, Mai's like, you know, on paper, maybe it looks like a mid-table team, but we're still Arsenal, top of the league. We've scored in every game this season, aside from the Newcastle game at home. You know, we really should be doing a little bit better. So one of you mentioned the word complacency. I don't know, like, maybe there was a little bit of that in the players, thinking if we do the things that we've been doing this season, etc., like we kind of know what we're doing, we're just going to go out there, do it, and it will come. And I don't know if ultimately, you know, this was that cliche of one team just wanting it a little bit more on the day. I've been happy for thoughts on that.
Yeah, I agree a bit. I mean, like the way Everton set up, Brad, it was spot on. It was you know, they basically doubled up on Martinelli and Saka. And to be fair, I thought they did a really good job. Like every time Martinelli or Saka got the ball, there was always two men on them. And I thought that was like quite impressive how they just constantly got people out the right positions, the right times. And it was quite similar to the way Newcastle set up against us after like 20 minutes, where they were just like, right, like we can't compete. We're just going to have 5 people in the midfield, and we're going to stop them. Once it goes wide, we're going to stop them doing anything, getting it into the middle, and we're going to double up so they can't go outside. And and then basically they were like, we're just going to hope we can do something up the other end. And yeah, I think usually what happens is if they try and stop Martinelli and Saka, you've got Odegaard and Nketiah who can do something. But for whatever reason, they just weren't able to. And that was a frustrating thing, because I thought, you know, like, is it individual brilliance, or do we just was it just our players not playing well? And it was hard to really assess that. And maybe we can discuss this in a bit, but I thought the substitutes also then just took a bit of momentum out, where actually, if you had just given that first, I know hindsight's a wonderful thing, but if you had just given that first 11, who are, you know, our best 11 players, the time to just find that moment of individual brilliance, or just find that bit where they can do something, maybe it's a different game. Maybe not. Maybe they go and score 2 and 3 and then we lose 3-0, and then we're like, why didn't he make any subs? But I did feel that last 15 minutes, the Man United game when it was 2-2, we were all over them, right? Similar games where we're chasing a winner or chasing an equalizer, we absolutely batter them in possession, and we create chance after chance. And, you know, for a player like Eddie Nketiah, that's great, right? But for 15 minutes, we did nothing. Eddie couldn't get anywhere near the ball, and then he had to come out wide and do things. And then it just seemed like the structure went out the window a bit.
But surely it's really different, right? You cited the Man United game as an example, but the Man United game, when we lost them away, like part of the criticism that was aimed at Arteta was that.
No, I meant Man United at home.
Oh, right.
Like,
sorry.
When we're 2-2, we were all over them, right? Chasing that winner. I know it's different when but then you'd expect when you're losing, you would just really tighten the screw and just try and get that. But we couldn't get any. They were comfortable, like you said, right? Pickford didn't have a save to make, and we like the Man United away game that you talked about. We came away from that game like, yeah, we lost, but we were like, actually, we played well enough to win. And we probably should have won were it not for some naive defending and maybe a few panic subs in that game. But this game, I said it to you like 5 minutes before the end, like we could play this for another half an hour. I don't think we're going to score.
And and I agree that was probably true. But Miles, can I get your take on the subs? Because Aaron has talked about the substitutions. I have my own views, but what were your thoughts on it? Because look, we've talked about squad depth for ages. We've talked about that being one of the key reasons why we thought that Arsenal might not be able to last in the title race. But we have in the transfer window done exactly that. We've gone for depth. We perhaps went for some bigger targets, couldn't get them. We couldn't get Mudryk, and we didn't end up getting Caicedo in the latter stage of the window. But we did get depth, right? So we got Trossard, we got Cuillor from Spezia, who although is an unknown entity, is clearly there as a backup to Gabriel for now anyway. And then we signed Jorginho, who is very experienced, starts for Chelsea before he came to us, but understandably he's not going to displace Partey. So we've gone for depth, we've gone for backup. So then they're on the bench, and two of those guys have come on. I mean, so what are your thoughts on it? Did you think that the subs were bad? Did you think that we should have? I mean, Aaron is saying that effectively you could have let that team try and find more solutions. The first team, the best team that we have on paper.
So I think the first couple of subs, Martinelli and Partey, I was quite surprised that he went for a double sub so early on. Like it was still half an hour to go. So in some ways, I agree with Aaron because he could have let that run another 5 or 10 minutes. Let's just see kind of what happens basically. And
also to allow people who had Martinelli in their dream team to get 2 points as opposed to 1 point.
Yeah, that's a good point as well.
Yeah.
But I can't say I was too unhappy because I remember the Newcastle game. Different game, obviously, but the fact that we were at home in that game, and then clearly Arteta, he didn't make, I can't remember the subs that he did make, but I don't think he made many, if any. And if he did make any, it was right towards the end of the game. And we were sort of, that's normally, that Newcastle game would normally be a game where you're sort of saying to the manager, as a fan, you're like, make a change, 10, 15, 20 minutes to go. But obviously, we didn't have the options off the bench that day. And it's a very, very different situation, as you just said, Raj, because we've added a couple of players, especially Trossard, who are there to, not just be backups, but to compete for first team spots. So you would like to think that they're the guys that you bring on. Jorginho and Trossard are the guys that you bring on to make that difference. So I can't say I was too unhappy because it was quite nice just to see him change it up a little bit earlier than normal.
It was 0-0 when he made the subs.
It was 0-0, yeah. And I think it just wasn't, whatever the problem was, it just wasn't happening for us for that first hour or so. It just hadn't happened. Maybe it was like you said, Marcelli was getting doubled up on and he just wasn't effective. So that sub made sense. Partey but we know Partey had a bit of an issue last week, didn't he? Against City away. So maybe that was part of the thinking around why Partey only played an hour. The Ødegaard one for me was that's the one that I wasn't that keen on, because I think if you're taking off Ødegaard, it needs to be a player like Smith Rowe coming on, in the sense that I know Smith Rowe wasn't on the bench, but it should be a player where what you're going to get. And you've seen Smith Rowe come on in games in the past. I'm just using Smith Rowe as an example, but you've seen him come in the past and make an impact. You know that he has been able to do it in the Premier League. With Vieira, we've just not seen it yet. Like I'm sure Vieira is going to go on to be a really, really good player, and he looks fantastic when he's got time on the ball. But I don't think yesterday was the kind of game. And I just don't think it was the kind of game for Vieira. And unless there was an injury problem with Ødegaard or something like that, I was really surprised. Like, he's our captain at the end of the day. Everything goes through him. And he's just so instrumental. Like, not generally, but I feel like for the most part, he's involved in some way with most of the things that we do good going forward. And a lot of the times that we actually create chances, like he is the guy that's orchestrating the play. He's got such a good link up with Saka as well. So I just thought Vieira, that felt a little bit more like desperation, where you just don't really know what Vieira is going to go on the pitch and do. And from memory, I don't think he did very much. And, again, it felt like the kind of game where you need to be up for it physically. And I'm not sure Vieira is quite there yet as well. So that's probably the one that was a bit like, and I think I said it in the group chat as well. And I think the response that you guys gave was, well, he's not had a very good game, but then who did? Like, do you know what I mean? No one really did. Like, I probably would have preferred, say, Xhaka to come off and play 2 number 10s or play another attacking midfielder and bring Vieira on, but keep Ødegaard on the pitch. But yeah, I thought Trossard did pretty well. I thought Trossard looked okay when he came on, and he was willing to have a couple of shots, and that was nice to see. And I think with Martinelli, it's an interesting one at the moment because he's not like there's a few theories with Martinelli that the reason he's not been as effective is because since Jesus came out of the team, I don't necessarily agree with this, but since Jesus came out of the team, his link up with Jesus is very different to his link up with Nketiah. So he's just not been as effective as a result of that. I'm not sure if that's necessarily true or not, but I don't want to say he's struggled, but he's probably not been as effective in the last few games as he was at the start of the season or the first part of the season. So that sub kind of made sense. But yeah, look, overall, I'm not like, I don't mind. I didn't mind him making a couple of early subs, but Ødegaard was the one that I would have wanted him to stay on the pitch personally.
Yeah, I think I kind of agree in that, like you said, Raj, if we want, that was the type of game where the only way we were really going to come out of it was either with a bit of luck or if someone did something special. And you're far more likely to get something special from Ødegaard than you are from Vieira. And like you said, Mize, I think those Everton players, they realised very quickly that we can kick these kids and we can have a go at them. I think Ødegaard, they were like at his toes quite early on. Saka got taken out a few times. Martinelli really struggled with the double up. And, I think Vieira is not the solution to that problem. Right? Like, if anything, Vieira is more of a target, a bit more lightweight than Ødegaard. And I thought, I did feel that we did lack a bit of, what's the word? Strength, if that's the right word, or just players. I think Trossard is probably a good player to bring on in that sense because it's probably why he brought Trossard on for Martinelli, because he thought, actually, I just need a bit more grit here and someone who's a bit older, a bit more mature. I don't think Vieira really gives you that. And I think I would have much rather had Ødegaard on the pitch. And again, Partey, I don't think you take your 2 best players off if you're trying to win a game. And we took off Ødegaard and Partey, and inevitably we became worse as a team.
Yeah, I'm not. So I don't really know where I stand on this, to be honest, because I can see particularly the value in keeping Ødegaard on, even if he's not having a great game. And partly, I think that's because actually, in a situation where you're searching for a goal, is it actually that much of an issue to have 2 creators on? So if Xhaka was to go off for Vieira, and I can only imagine it's because Vieira hasn't really played in that role for us yet. Maybe Arteta doesn't see him in that way. The thing is, I think what we do need to think about a little bit, right, is this season, we've been quite used to going game by game and kind of looking at this as a, let's get through every single game individually. What do we have to do in this game, etc. And I'm not saying that's necessarily the wrong thing to do, but Arteta as a manager will still have to look at this season and how he manages the season and how he manages his players through the season. And what I mean by that is, I don't think it's as straightforward for us to say, for example, with Vieira, they clearly rate him. They clearly think that he's a talented player. They wouldn't have signed him otherwise. It's very difficult to expect him to just kind of play the odd cup game and then be brilliant and then show us all the things that he needs to do in those cup games. It's very difficult. And then equally, it's very difficult to just think then, well, we'll bring him on when we're like winning 2-0 or 3-0 or something like this at home. Like, it's not always going to happen. Ultimately, sometimes you probably do need to let him come on when actually we need to find a solution and we're not playing well. It's just, give an opportunity to try and unlock something, put him in that pressure situation as part of his kind of integration into this team. And I'm using him as an example, but it could be any one of these kind of new players. Because otherwise, I don't think it's going to... I think we'll be in this catch-22 where we'll keep saying he hasn't shown enough, when we're not really giving him enough opportunities to kind of grow into the team and show those things. But I do agree that perhaps keeping Ødegaard on the pitch would have been the right thing to do overall. with Jorginho and Trossard again, like, look, fundamentally, I sort of think that we can't be in a situation where we think that the best option when we're not doing well is just to keep everyone on the pitch. Like, then it just feels like there's no point. There's no point to us even what having backup or having kind of competition for places. Yes, it's not unusual that you would still have a best 11, particularly when you're on top of the league. But I do think that in situations like against Everton, where it just wasn't clicking for whatever reason, it wasn't working, no one was really standing out, etc. And you could argue one of the things that we weren't doing well was controlling the game and kind of just settling down and be calm. And every analyst and every kind of tactico or whoever you want to call them who were analyzing the Jorginho deal were effectively saying, well, that's the thing Jorginho brings. He brings calmness. That's what his game is. So you could argue that actually that made sense. He's going to come on and he's going to try and kind of, calm things down and play sensible passes. And actually I sort of rewatched parts of the game again, and he sort of did do that. So look, I think the frustration is ultimately the subs didn't come on and improve us. That's ultimately the frustration. So in hindsight, they didn't improve us. So in hindsight, actually, if assuming that is a known thing, which it never is, then you might as well have just kept the original bunch on the pitch. But at the same time, fine, we've lost the game and it's unfortunate. But you'd hope that actually that game time that Vieira had and Jorginho had and Trossard have is just going to help them be kind of even more valuable to us in the upcoming games. You'd hope that, right? Anyway, listen, we've done a great job at going past the hour, talking a lot about Man City, and I think getting into it about Arsenal. I think it's interesting because I feel like when we were reflecting on this Arsenal game, I think we were appropriately critical, but I think at the same time, like, the City game has provided some additional perspective in how to analyze this. It's going to be a long season, isn't it, guys? Very, very quickly, let's go to the league table, and again, just getting your guys' thoughts. So, if there's one team in that top kind of 4 unit that has really benefited from this weekend, it's Man United, right? Man United, we've been talking about City. And, is a City going to do it? A City going to take over Arsenal, etc.? I mean, Man United have come out this weekend looking okay, right? Because Man United are now, again, only 3 points behind City. So they're on 42 points. City are on 45 points. And Arsenal have played a game less than City and are on 50 points. So there's still that 8-point gap between Arsenal and Man United. And Arsenal have played a game less. United do have this sort of run coming up of fairly straightforward fixtures. They've got Leeds home and away, I think, coming up back to back. You would probably expect them to win both those games. Man City, I think, are going away to Villa. I want to say that they're away.
They're at home.
I think they're at home. Sorry.
They're home.
Okay. And Villa are, they kind of lost to Leicester in spectacular fashion, I suppose, the other day. But they have been quite tricky, right? Villa, I think I saw a stat the other day, prior to the Leicester game, there is no team that has picked up more points since Unai Emery joined Villa than Villa. So I think only Arsenal have picked up more points than Villa since Emery joined. That was up till last game. But I guess given Arsenal lost, it's probably still true. So that could be tricky for City. But what do you guys think? All in all, we've got Brentford next week. Myers, you sort of said how important Brentford is. If we win, imagine we win, City win, and Man United win. Is that an outcome that you're expecting?
Yeah, I would say so. So I mean, look, it's just specifically on Brentford, right? Our game. I like Brentford a lot. They generally play really good football.
They're the form team in the league.
They're the form, and I was going to come on to this. They are in. I didn't realize how good their form currently is. Have they not lost like in months? Is it? I was having a look, and I didn't really get a chance to look properly.
It could be. I mean, again, I've only got their last 5 games. I can get more up, but they've got their last 5 games where they've won 4 and drawn 1.
So obviously, with World Cup break as well, but factored in, but. So yeah, they haven't lost since October.
They've only lost 4 games all season, I think, which is the same amount of City now.
That's crazy. So they've only lost. Yeah. They lost 4-0 to Villa in October, and since then 3, 6, 9 games unbeaten. I think that is, and quite a few wins in there as well. Liverpool, They drew to Tottenham, beat City. So yeah, they're obviously a serious team, 7th in the league. So I don't think it's going to be easy at all. And like Raj, you were kind of going through some of the fixtures that United have got, and you're sort of like, yeah, Leeds twice, they should get 6 points from those games. But this is it, right? Like we should have beaten Everton yesterday. Just you can't. It's so hard to predict like that, and I think that's probably the thing that I'm just not even going to bother doing anymore, right? Like looking at the fixtures and being like trying to map it out, because it's so unpredictable. I mean, I think this particular game, I think it's going to be a really tough game against Brentford, because of their form. I really do like their team. I like their front three, Mbuemo, Wissa, and Tony. It's just like a really dangerous front three, kind of Tony leading the attack, and obviously like a really big physical presence, but he's a very good player. And then the other two kind of on the flanks have both got goals in them. So yeah, like I can see it being quite a dangerous game. But like I said before, from an Arsenal perspective, if you've got any ambitions of winning the league, you just have to respond. Like you have to respond to a defeat like we had yesterday and a performance like we had yesterday. You've got a home game against a team that on paper you should be beating. And so you just have to come out, however we do it. I don't really care if we don't play well. I'm not really that bothered. You just have to get the 3 points, because again, like I said before, on the assumption that City beat Villa at home, which they probably should do, you don't want to be going into that City game in midweek the following week with like a 2-point gap, for example. That creates all sorts of pressure, and it just sets that night up like that game. It just sets the narrative up for that game to be all about City going top by the end of that game. That's what it will be all about, that, and then it will become all about Arsenal are crumbling, because that'll be, losing to Everton, potentially dropping points to Brentford, and then losing to City. That is a bit of a collapse really from where we were. So it's just massive. So that's why I'm saying I just want to get a result. I don't really care how we get it, because we just have to get the 3 points.
Agree with you. And Aaron, and Miles mentioned the front three of Brentford. Does that in some ways help us in the sense that we've struggled against teams that are sitting back against us, but Brentford have got a dangerous front three. Do you hope that they actually try and be a bit adventurous against us, or can you see them setting up in the same way that perhaps Everton and Newcastle did?
Yeah, I think Brentford away, when Brentford play away from home, they're a very different team to what they are when you go to their place. So, and I think part of that is because they do try and play football, and credit to them. The problem is that's a lot harder to do when you're away from home, and hopefully, it's a Saturday 3:00. The ground will be buzzing. It will be, we make it very difficult. So I'm fairly confident. I'll be very, very surprised if we drop points. I'll be shocked, but I don't think it'll be an easy game. I like you said, it's one of those where, yes, obviously the result's important, but I do think we still need to play well, because we're not yet at that part of the season where it's like last 5 games, grind out results. Like we still need to build a base, and these players need form to just beat these teams below us. And I know Brentford are doing well, but in the bottom 12 teams that we play, we should just routinely win home and away. And we need to just get back into the habit. Yes, we had a blip, but our away record this season has been phenomenal. We just need to get back into the habit of doing well, winning, and then just cracking on. And then that will set up City. Like you said, if we go into that City game with a 5-point gap, we know that no matter what happens, we're leaving that game top of the table. And that for me it just helps calm the narrative down a bit. Whoever, I think Amazon are doing the game against City, they'll be hyping it up like no tomorrow if that was a City can go top game. But if it's Arsenal can actually, then we go into that game where Arsenal can extend their lead to 8 points game, and that's a very different narrative.
Quick fire predictions, Aaron, and go with the momentum.
I will go with 1-0 Arsenal.
Interesting. Miles?
Yeah, 2-1. single goal win.
It's really annoying. Those are my two options.
Sorry,
like no, it's all right. So look, I'm still going to
you
go.
can go with
one.
the same. There's no reason.
Yeah, I
to
know. I wanted to be different. So initially, I did think 1-0, and then I thought that maybe it might be a 2-1 game. I'm going to go with 2-1. I'm going to go with 2-1. I really hope. I really, really, really hope that we get back to our old way of scoring early. Like that's been such a great thing that we've been doing all season. I think it's kind of like stopped recently, and I really love that. So I really hope we do that again. I can't wait though, because you know how it is. The Emirates is just so good to be a part of at the moment, and I feel the players really vibe off it. So I can't wait to be part of that spectacle again. But yeah, like you said, my I think you summed it up really, really well when we really don't want it to be a case of you drop points here and then the narrative is City beat Arsenal, City go top. Like you just don't want that. Yeah, look, Mufasa says Emery statue at the Emirates if Villa win. That's true as well. Like, I think right now we are supporting every single team that plays City. But listen, I've still got my eye on United now. They're still annoying me a little bit. They've come back to annoy me again. So
yeah,
Leeds, come on, do your thing, Leeds. Mice, Aaron, and thank you guys both very, very much. We're not going to be recording again. It's very unlikely we're recording again before Brentford. So we'll be speaking to everyone post Brentford. So let's just hope that we are having a positive conversation. Mice, Aaron, and thank you again. Good night, boys.
Good night. Cheers, guys.
See you later on.
Bye-bye.